At 19, Jennifer Asbenson's future looked sunny, living the high life in Palm Springs, California. The beautiful young woman with a big heart had a dream job helping disabled kids. Then, life took a terrible turn one dark night when she accepted a ride from a charming stranger after missing her bus to work. Chillingly, the man who picked her up eventually told cops the sadistic story. This is his voice as he calmly confesses many years later to Chicago police.
She was waiting for the bus, and I pulled on the window and asked her to give me a ride.
Jennifer was worried about being late for work, so she went with him and was delivered safely to her destination. When the man offered her another ride the next morning, she readily agreed.
I remember she said she was getting up like around 6, so I got in my car and I drove back toward that area.
Jennifer, too, remembers every terrifying detail. This time, she would not make it to work.
I got in the car. It all happened so fast. In between his door and his seat, he pulled out a gun. He was screaming at me, calling me names. He held the gun to my head. And I looked at him, and it was just horrifying.
Her attacker remembers all the gruesome details, too.
I just reached over and I grabbed her by the hair, and then she got scared, and I produced the gun. I told her to turn around, I tied her hands behind her back.
The mysterious man drove Jennifer to a desolate California desert. Her cries for help would go unheard. She was beaten senseless and forced to perform multiple sex acts.
I just sort of stared out the window while he did what he was gonna do. I saw that he was getting really angry and it was escalating. And then he just grabbed me by the throat and started strangling me.
I just had my hand on her throat and I just kept choking and she kept kicking and her saliva was coming out of her mouth and her face was turning blue and then red.
Did you think you were gonna die?
I didn't know if he was gonna slit my throat. I didn't know what he was gonna do, but I knew it was gonna be bad.
Jennifer also didn't know at the time that she'd been snared by a brutal serial killer. He had tortured 4 other women, killing them all. She said her attacker repeatedly hit her and seemed to enjoy hurting her. He made her black out and come to over and over again.
I just wanted to tell you. I didn't want to be tortured anymore.
At one point, while her attacker was gathering knives from the trunk of his car, Jennifer saw her chance to flee. With her hands still tied behind her back, she desperately took off running. But in the middle of the desert, there was no place to hide.
And then suddenly I felt a pain to the back of my head and I just fell. And then I realized I wasn't shot because he had me by my hair and he was just dragging me back to the car. He made me get up and he told me to perform oral sex on him. And I said no. When I refused, then I stood up and I just said, just kill me. I want to die. I want to die right now. I don't want you to torture me anymore. Just kill me. Because I knew he was going to. I just wanted him to do it then because I was sick of being tortured. And when I told him to do that, he just shoved the gun in my mouth and I just closed my eyes.
He repeatedly thrust a gun in her mouth, but he never pulled the trigger. Jennifer says asking her tormentor to kill her may be what ultimately saved her life.
He just started acting different. Like he didn't know what he was gonna do.
He threw her in the trunk of his car and took off again.
I'm thinking I'm gonna be cut up into pieces and that I'm gonna die today, that I'm only 19.
She managed to wedge out of her restraints and used her fingers to pry open the trunk latch while the car was still in motion.
He pulled over immediately. He jumped out and he just started bouncing on the back of the trunk to make sure it was shut. Then he jumped in the car and he tried to peel out. And when he got stuck, I just thought, this is my time to go.
Do you leap out? What do you do next?
I just jumped out and I ran down the road and I heard a car coming alongside of me. So I just started grabbing at the car. I said, help, help. And I held onto the rear view mirror and they sped up. Eventually they just left me and I turned around and he was running down the middle of the road with a machete chasing me. And that just made me run faster. And then a truck came and I just stood in front of it.
The terrifying nightmare was over.
They put me in the truck. They brought me to a gas station and then they called 911.
It would take years for police to find the sadistic monster who tried to rape and kill Jennifer that day. Turns out the man who attacked her was Andrew Urdiales, a former Marine who went on a nationwide killing spree. Jennifer is the only known victim who survived his rampages. When he was finally traced to other murders through the gun he used, he readily confessed.
He basically told us in some great detail about the things he had done in our jurisdictions, and we matched them up to the crime scenes.
It was 10 years before Jennifer was finally able to face her attacker in court in Illinois, where he was apprehended. He was eventually sentenced to death for his vicious crimes, but had his sentence commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jennifer's suffering was also a life sentence. During her long wait for justice, she sought treatment for both physical and mental wounds.
When you get out of a situation like that, it doesn't always go uphill from there. I lived in terror.
Then she met someone who would change her life, another woman who also suffered unspeakable tragedy, losing her 10-year-old son at the hands of a brutal butcher.
Chris bled out. He stabbed him over 50 times. Chris suffered a lot.
Coming up, the two women tragically tied together, their resilience would soon intertwine as Jennifer finds a way to make her fear disappear.